Let's do this. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Omar. I am the CEO and founder of a company called JobPixel. We're so excited to be here. I'm here with Gina. Gina, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, great. Thanks so much for having me, Omar. And hello to my fellow panelists, Brian and Chad. I'm Gina. I lead brand and marketing for Shaker Recruitment Marketing. Shaker is a recruitment marketing agency, and I'm just so excited to speak with you all today.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Brian Adams, CEO and founder of Happy Dance. We're a career website platform. We work with enterprise global brands and the mid-market.
One of the
Nice to
best names, by the way, Happy Dance.
Thanks, Chet.
Who doesn't want to do a happy dance? I mean, seriously, everybody wants to do a happy dance.
Well, now we need to see you do a happy dance, Chad. Come on, what's your best happy dance?
No, I would be doing a happy dance if I was in Portugal, but I'm back in the U.S. and there's snow, so I'm not going to happy dance. I'm Chad Sowash, by the way. Chad and Cheese podcast. I don't know why I'm here. Omar, for some reason, wants me here.
I didn't want to exactly. I didn't want you to introduce yourself because of that reason. I knew you were going to throw one up. All right. Well, thank you for coming. Well, everyone, we're really excited to discuss a couple of things today. The first piece, which is kind of the topic of this webinar, is being bold in TA. Being bold in our industry, especially when we're starting a new year, please stop saying that it's February already, etc. There's still plenty of time in the year to go to the gym or start a diet or fix your TA stack or your HR stack or whatever is going on at your organization. You got time. And most of the time, we kind of, in our industry, we just give up. We say, oh, I don't have budget, I don't have resources, I don't have et cetera. And we just give up and we let the problem that we're looking to solve just be there. Being bold in our industry is thinking outside the box and coming up with solutions to solve these problems internally. I use this example given what we do here at JobPixel. When it comes to video, some organizations, they want to do video content to, talking about their employees. Some organizations have the budget to go hire a massive video crew, spend $500,000 and fly people all around the world in order to do that. And some organizations, they say, you know what? I don't want to do it that way. I'm actually going to take a step back, go over to my marketing team, knock on their door or knock on their Zoom or whatever floats your boat and say, hey, you have the camera equipment, you have the resources. I need those resources because they're not currently being used in order for me to get my job done. And that's what bold sometimes means. And a lot of people can, say it in a different way. Everyone is different. So the first question that we want to ask is to yourselves as well is I'm actually going to start it here. Here we go. All right. So what does it mean to be bold? And would love for people to type in some answers in the actual poll itself. And then afterwards, I want Gina, Brian, and Chad to also give their perspective. So we'll give this about a minute. Answers coming in fast. Love it. All right. Here we go. All right, we're ending it now. All right. Let's get some of the results. No. All right. Yes. Okay, here we go. We're gonna share the answers afterwards. Or do you guys see them? Can you see them? I don't know if they're popping up or not for everyone.
I can't see him.
You can see them. All right. I will share these afterwards as well, after the call, so we can see what people have said. But I want to move it over to Gina to talk a little bit more about being bold because she has some interesting data points that they've collected at Shaker that everyone's going to be really excited to talk about. And see.
Sure. Thanks so much, Omar. So, for me personally, being bold can have many different definitions depending on the context of your situation. And being bold oftentimes means doing what might be a little bit uncomfortable or what your typical response might be, your default, and doing something a little bit different, whether that means a little bit different than you've normally done, different than you've done in the past, or different than your competition. Those are just some of the definitions. And I'm so curious to hear what bold means for others. And of course, there's so many different dimensions of that diamond. At Shaker this year, we published the vision report, which takes the best insights from the smartest and brightest in the industry, from the people at Shaker to our clients, to our great partners like you, Omar, and Chad, and Brian, and industry analysts and influencers, and ask them one simple question. What is your number one best piece of advice for talent leaders in the year ahead? And it was really interesting to see what everybody shared. And in fact, the big overarching theme of 2024 was be bold. And we saw that across all areas of the business, across talent acquisition, employer branding, recruitment marketing, HR. All of the responses were astounding to be bold. So there's more that we can share about the report, but that's what's in it. And in that report, you'll hear from technology founders, subject matter experts, from talent leaders about what's top of mind for them and how they plan to be bold in this upcoming year. So we're really excited to share that research. We have some snippets to share today. And then at the end of the webinar, there'll be a QR code where you can scan and download the full report.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. Chad, what does it mean to be bold to you?
I mean, it's the definition is, taking risks. I think it's interesting because our industry, and this good, bad, or indifferent, is behind many other industries. So you can see what has worked. And to be quite frank, most of the other industries have already taken these risks, and you can see how it's paid off or it has not, right? And that's the beauty of, I think, being, at least everybody's saying that, obviously HR, TA is behind, let's say, for instance, sales and marketing and so on and so forth. And that's okay. That's okay. But the risk has already been taken, right? So I think for us, much like Gina said, to literally step outside of our comfort zone, but we can do that with leaders who have already taken the risk, right? And that's one of the things, I mean, for our business with Chad and Cheese, I mean, it's pretty much, that's our brand, right? HR's Most Dangerous Podcast, taking risk. HR isn't incredibly dangerous, so it's a very low bar. But again, it makes it so much easier. It makes it so much easier to be able to take a look at your peers, and really, bold means something different for them than it does for us. We're lucky enough to be able to take a look at what they've done, what works, and try to adapt it to our practice, to our business.
Well said. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all saying a lot of the same thing, but for me, it's about, if this isn't the year to challenge convention, I don't know what is, and I think there's an element of daring to experiment and try new things. But, I think right now where we are, it's time to question things that perhaps haven't been questioned for a while. And, just with the advent of AI, there's so many new opportunities to innovate. But I would say being bold is resisting the edge to just go down the route of doing the same things radically more efficiently. I would say being bold is having the courage to do things completely differently to before, because the landscape's changed, and if we blew something up and literally had to rebuild it from the ground up in the landscape and time we're in now, would you even start with the same foundations that you did a few years ago? I don't think so. And therein lies the opportunity. So this is about not trying to improve with marginal gains. It's about daring to try and improve with seismic change, and ironically, I think not daring to do something radically different could be the biggest risk of all.
Real quick, take a look at the market, right? So OpenAI comes out. Nobody knows who the hell they are. And next thing you know, they're the biggest AI player in the game. They took risks. They could take risks. Obviously, they were a much smaller player than a Google or Microsoft or many of these companies who already had this technology. They just weren't taking the risk to get it out there. Now it's forced. Now it was forced by a much smaller player. So the big question is, do you wait until your hand is forced, or do you plan and you actually get it out there yourself, right? And that's again taking a risk. It's a little bit different in HR, right, than it is for an open AI or what have you.
And the interesting thing is, in the vision report, when we heard from talent leaders and across the industry, 100% of the respondents said you must act now. Not even knowing necessarily what that thing might be, but as you both said, Brian and Chad, the risk of inaction is greater than action. And so leaders are admitting that we might not even know what that thing is, but we know we've got to do something. And that is a statement in and of itself. And that is bold, because we all know that the willingness to want to do something differently, you're already halfway there, right? The thought that no, I don't need to change, or I'm not even aware that change needs to happen, that's risky. But if you are aware and you're saying, I know that something needs to change and I'm willing to change, you're 50% there. So that's a great start.
100% is a lot. I mean, I don't know when was the last time 100% of people agreed on something.
Everyone said, yeah, it's in the report.
Pretty incredible.
And
it's pretty incredible.
And that means something.
You see. So we have a hand raised. So Lorna, tell us what you, here we go. Just gave you the space, Lorna. What do you want to say?
You gotta unmute yourself though. I know this whole
All right.
You can do it, Lorna. You can do it.
You can do it. If you raise your hand, we're gonna pick on you.
I guess if you want to type a question in the chat, we could read it.
Yeah, feel free to type a question in. All right, no problem. All right, so I think we're good here. Like we've defined bold really well. We've talked about it. People here in the chat, please, if you have any comments, concerns, questions, feel free to write them in there. Have a discussion on your own as well, or submit the questions into the Q&A. The next thing that we want to, here we go. Zoom is not showing audio mic. Oh, we have to allow you to talk. So if you want to raise your hand,
getting the heat.
Yeah.
Of course it's me. Duh.
Oh,
It's
it is
not
Chad. Yeah. So Ed, if you'd like to come in, Ed, if you'd like to come in, let us know. Just raise your hand and we're more than happy to bring you in up here on stage to talk. Awesome. So I'll start with the next question is, how have you embraced boldness in the past? So I'm actually going to launch this right now. Here we go. All right. How have you embraced boldness in the past? Feel free to answer the question with a quick type in. We will share all those responses that people type in after the webinar in a really nice email. We'll put them in like quotes and things like that. So start answering away, and then after that, we'll have a discussion about it.
You don't have like Jeopardy music or anything to play right now? What's going on?
Or some Benson Boone. I've been really into, talk about bold. Did anybody see the Grammys? I didn't know who Benson Boone was. And then that kid walked around J-Lo, tapped her on the shoulder, ripped off his tux, was in like a Freddie Mercury one-piece sequin amazingness.
Okay.
And then did a backflip up on stage and then did another backflip. Talk about bold and great branding. Now I know everything about Benson Boone, and I want to see more of him, see more random backflips, spontaneous backflips on the stage.
Hey, are you hearing this, Omar? Because if you're going on stage this year, we expect this. We expect sparkly bodysuit,
Yeah.
Be like the old,
You
like
really want to see
Elvis.
that, Chad?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
He
That'd be
dared
great.
he dared to be different. He did different at the Grammys. He created a memory that is
Uh-huh.
something that, and I might go to one of my neighbors who I don't know what type of music they're into and say, "Did you see the Grammys?" And then they say, "Oh yeah, that guy, right? Who did the backflip." Like, okay, that was a memorable moment. And anybody who taps J-Lo on the shoulder like that too is bold. That was a bold move. But obviously it was very calculated and he knew exactly what he was going to do with precision. It was rehearsed. That's great boldness, you know? I'm just filling up the time, Omar, but
No, I like
let
it.
me know. Does
We're
anybody
waiting on the
have
poll to finish. This is
trying
great.
to fire up the
No,
chat?
it's funny because you talked about boldness as well. Because I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody last night. So when you said Freddie Mercury, I was like, oh my God, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Awesome.
Not the movie, Freddie Mercury. My heart goes to Freddie Mercury, not the movie.
Yeah. Freddie, of course, but the movie was really good, and I was watching like all the outfits that they picked because they copied a lot of the real stuff that he did in real life
Yeah.
in Bohemian Rhapsody, and it won four Oscars, which is really incredible. It's still a great movie. Awesome. So, how have you embraced boldness in the past? I'm actually gonna start with Chad this time. So you want to go ahead, Chad, talk about how you embrace boldness? I mean, oh God.
Yeah. So as we get comfortable, right? We talk about, so we started the podcast back in 2017. And I mean, Spotify, Apple, I mean, we've got all these different areas that we are getting distribution. It's amazing. But we're continuing to watch the market and we start to see YouTube blowing up and we don't have a video podcast. So 2 years ago, we made the move. You can call it bold. To me, it wasn't bold. It was just I saw where the market was moving, and you had to stay with the market, right? So we made the bold move to be able to go into to video. So we now have over 500 videos on YouTube. The channel is, I mean, it's robust. We've got tons of subscribers, and I mean, it was a great move. But we were watching the market. So again, I go back to my first comment. You know, if HR, if TA, if we're actually just paying attention, if we're basically just paying attention, we can see what works. And we can go out there and we can emulate that. We can mimic it. We can do those types of things. That's what we did. We paid attention. We paid attention back in 2016 when we started talking about starting a podcast because we were watching the numbers because of, you know, these wonderful little devices. And then later, we can continue to do the same thing. So I think, you know, HR needs to do the same thing. Need to keep your head up. Yes, you've got to get your head down and do the work. I totally get that. But you've got to take time to pop that head up to see what's going on so that you're not outflanked. You need to get great talent. There are other individuals, other companies that are out there and individuals in those companies who will be more bold than you are. Watch what they're doing and try to emulate that.
I love that. That's great. Brian.
Yes, I mean, throughout my entrepreneurial career, I think taking risks is just sort of second nature, you know, to the point where I think my threshold for doing so is a lot higher. But, you know, when you sort of look at that, how does that translate to a TA audience? Very early on, I had a business coach who always encouraged me to think about, you know, when you go to bed at night, think about this one thing. If a startup company popped up, and they were rivaling you, like how would they put you out of business? Like where's the weakness, where's the weak link, and how would they out innovate and be more creative and do something that's more relevant to your audience and put you out of business? And I think, you know, that's always sort of stuck with me. And a number of times I've found a little bit of budget to invest in a bit of innovation or R&D, or got on a plane and gone to a place in a room where I don't know anybody to learn something where I don't know anything about the subject matter and build new community. And you know, I've always found that if you do something in slightly unusual things happen. And I think this is the time where we've got to take the lesson from that is, you know, dare to step outside of your comfort zone and try something different, because that's the only way different things are really going to happen. And I think that's a universal truth we've all got to take to heart. And I think, you know, we've been talking to a lot of TA leaders over the last couple of months, and for the first time, they're getting new labeled budget for sort of AI and innovation with no expectation of a return on investment. Just go and see what does work, what doesn't work. Keep, like, as the panel has said, see what some competitors or challengers are doing, learn from them, you know, steal with pride and just shake it up and do things differently. And I think, you know, I think we're all in that boat at the moment.
Well said. Really good. Love it. Gina.
For me, being bold has been ingrained in my lifestyle, especially choosing brand and marketing for, you know, not just a career, but it's been my life. So to me, being bold is every decision that I make each day and choosing consciously each time to do something different. And I'd advise talent acquisition leaders and employer branding and recruitment marketing leaders that being bold does not necessarily need to be some grand gesture. It can be in the small decisions that you make every day so that you reach a point where you look back and say, wow, over time, that was bold. So you might not know necessarily in the moment that you're making bold decisions, but if you are doing what Chad said, looking at the landscape, looking all around it, at your competitors, looking at the data, looking at the current situation, then looking within and saying, what does our organization need? What are our business goals? What does our function need to do? Knowing that confidently and delivering that forward, and then making these smaller, bold gestures. You don't have to wait for the grand, bold moment. Because I think what might happen to leaders is you might get analysis paralysis, where you're waiting for, okay, what's that big bold thing that I can do? Okay, let me not go yet. Let me not do it yet. It reminds me of being in Brooklyn playing double dutch, and it's like, okay, there's 2 ropes going. I want to jump in. I'm gonna get smacked in the face, and then the best way to do it is just go, jump, find one rope. Okay, jump in at one point. You might get smacked in the face with the rope, but that's okay because you're going to be fine. Keep going. And the only way to get really good at double dutch is to just keep trying. And then I think that boldness will develop with every smaller interaction that you make. So this way it doesn't feel so intangible. Let's make bold more tangible and more ingrained in your day-to-day.
I think you make a really good point there, Gina, because I think this is the year where you need to set expectations of your peers around you to say, listen, we're going to get smacked in the face a few times here. Like, and if we don't, we're doing something wrong. You know, there's no safe path to boldness and creative innovation and breaking new ground and disrupting. So let's brace ourselves. Let's take it as a win when we get smacked in the face, because like it means we're doing things right. But yeah, I entirely agree.
I can't take credit for that. I think that's a Mike Tyson quote.
Well, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Yeah.
Everybody has a plan. Everybody has a plan. Well, combining, you know, what Brian said and what Gina had said, you know, there are, again, companies who are getting more quote unquote leeway around AI, mainly because of the productivity gains, and every business wants to see productivity gains, right? But again, there's that whole risk piece that, you know, what do you do? Little bits at a time. Exactly what we're seeing, Gina. We're seeing many companies start with just pieces of the process. So let's say, for instance, just interview scheduling. Why does a human being have to do that? That's a horrible job. A horrible job. So we talked to Eileen, who's over at GM at the time, and they literally, over General Motors, they had, I think it was over 100 people doing interview scheduling. Took all those individuals out, redistributed them through the actual team to do other things other than doing interview scheduling. And then the AI took over just that little bit, right? Then they could show at that point, just that part of the process. And the process is very long, but that little window of the process, they could show dramatic gains. So you as a TA leader, as an HR leader, you get to go back and say, well, we changed this bit, but look at the gains that we got out of it. Many of those TA leaders who are doing these types of things, just that baby step, they are getting not just a seat at the table, but a very warm seat at the table because they're showing gains that their peers can't show. So that's, again, another thing of kind of like being behind the innovation curve at this time where sales and marketing are really up front. It's really hard for them to get more productivity because they're always moving. For us, we have a whole process that needs to be better, faster, smoother for the recruiters and for the candidates. Now we take it bits at a time, baby steps, and again, that seat at the table is going to be warm.
Yeah, Chad, to your point, what I believe is the foundation, and to answer Anthony's question in the chat, one of the ways that leaders can be bold, one of the ways is to equip themselves with the data that will give them the confidence to lead with confidence. And so I think that is one of the tangible ways talent leaders can be bold right now, is to get your arms around your analytics and get some data behind you. Whether it's disjointed today, you can bring it together later. There's ways to get some analytics behind you, build it in pieces, like Chad said, and step by step, because the more data that you have to point to, and it's not going to solve the whole puzzle. It's one piece of the puzzle. But one piece of the puzzle is getting your arms around the data, and then you have things to point to, and you can make more confident decisions. And I think that confidence is the core of being bold. Only those confident leaders are those that can be bold.
I love that with it's, start with the data. If it's evidence based, you're de-risking the bold decision that you're going to make. I think starting piece by piece and doing small elements of these bold changes is also really good advice. I think the counter to this, though, is if we're doing small bits of innovation and improving little bits at a time, like, you can demonstrate massive improvements, which is admirable. And I think that's where we are in the marketplace. But I definitely put it under the category of faster horses. Like, we're finding ways to make the horses go faster instead of stepping back and going, where's the car? Like, how do we completely radically change? And the question in the chat is super interesting. What are some examples of bold decisions you're seeing which need to be made in the industry today? I would say the answer to that is yes, look for the small improvements. Yes, start with the data, absolutely. But also take a step back and redefine what the ultimate success criteria is, and remove all of the preconception of convention of how you've got there before, and start with a blank canvas and brainstorm. What if we had incredible artificial intelligence technology and carte blanche to do anything? How do we get from A to B radically different? And I think when we shift from looking for the marginal gains, improving what we've got, versus what if that completely blew up, what would we replace it with? There's two tracks of thought, and I think being bold this year means having both of those tracks concurrently running and doing experiments and tests on both sides.
And also there's no excuse at this point. We have so many tools now that you can literally feed it data and you're like, boom, there we go, magic. And it tells you everything you need to know. There are tools right now where you can say, what's broken in my process? And it will literally tell you exactly what is broken in your process, instead of hiring McKinsey or Accenture or all the consulting firms. You have a little consultant that you can just kind of type away with and have a chat. And a lot of times here, even at JobPixel, we use AI in a lot of ways. If we want to think about something specific that we want to do, sometimes it allows us to just bring our thinking down. It's like, what are the pros and cons of doing X, Y, and Z, etc. And you can ask it those questions, and most of the time it gives you a good answer if you engineer the prompt well enough.
Yes, and isn't that liberating too for anybody who may have not considered themselves to be bold in the past? Now things are changing so rapidly, and there's so much technology at our fingertips, and really even the people that are creating the AI don't 100% know where it's going. So isn't that a liberating thing to say, well, that should obliterate your imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome should be out the window, right? Because now it's like, well, now I can try anything, experiment, like Brian said, experiment with anything,
Absolutely.
Well, from a bold standpoint, being able to take a look at these things that how we used to do business, right? Much like the job description, right? And that is the front face of every company, is somebody has to go read this crappy, job description, right? And then I have to send them my crappy resume. I mean, from our standpoint, how are individuals consuming information, right? How are they consuming content today? They're generally not sitting around reading a newspaper anymore. Okay, let's just be frank. We're not reading
Listening to
newspapers anymore.
podcasts, Chad. They're
Yeah.
listening to podcasts.
Oh, well, yeah, they're doing that too. They're listening to podcasts. They're watching videos, TikToks, Instagram. I think, especially this year, and again, we've already seen this is working. So to be able to get out there and understand how your job seekers, how your talent, how your employees consume information, and then start giving them that information in those different vehicles, whether it's video, whether it's audio. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to understand your people. And because those are also people you want to keep, and there are people out there that you want to bring in. And we cannot continue just to throw, and this drives me crazy. I see people talking about job distribution via Instagram. How the hell are you going to do that? I'm not going to read a job description on Instagram. Are you going to do video? Are you going to do some type of, how's that actually going to work? Are you going to use influencers? There are influencers that are out there that have huge job seeker bases. We work with JT O'Donnell, who has like 1.4 million on her TikTok alone. I think she has over 4 million on LinkedIn. So it's like, to be bold, we already have these pieces, these video and audio and influencers already in place. Now what we have to do is use them.
So what you're saying, content is very important.
Content is how we communicate, right? So if we're not using, it should be our number one content developers or providers are our employees, to be able to do a couple of things. Sentiment analysis on how is it actually going, right? First and foremost. Secondarily, to be able to use some of those stories, whether they're long form or short form, out in the public, that they are your brand. And as people better understand that, this isn't all about salary and working for a company for 40 years anymore. They're making a decision. Yes, about the money. Don't get me wrong. Should pay your people well, but they also want to know who they're working with, why they're working there, all those different things. And you can't do that on a job description, because people are not going to consume that the way that they're going to consume one of your employees talking about what they do day by day and why they love it so much. That, to me, I don't know why every company isn't out there doing that today, because it's so easy. You send them.
Yeah.
You've got this little thing they can record here. Everything happens there, and you control it all. So be bold, do that.
I think it's funny because we start talking about AI and the innovation of what's possible with technology and all the rest of it. And to your point, Chad, actually, I think what we're coming full circle to come back to is it's not about the tools, it's how you use the tools, because I think we can all agree that there's a good story and there's a bland, dull, boring employee story. There's a story that's on brand. There's a story that sets expectations, inspires and convinces, and there's other ways of telling stories as well. So the platforms and the technology are all there now, but how many organizations are failing to be bold enough to tell a story in a creative way, or give license to an employee to tell the truth about not just why it's great, but also what you need to be prepared for and set expectations such, so it's going to be interesting, because once we get familiar with the technology and that becomes the new norm, now the race to the top is how bold we are and how creative and innovative we are to tell those great human stories and make real connections with the audience. And I think that's the litmus test that we're going to be interested to.
The question is how many departments actually have somebody who's focused on doing this, or they have a partner who's focused on doing this? Because this is a full-time, I'm telling you, because this is what I do. I do content for a living, right? This is a full-time job to be able to shape your message and to be able to do it with your own people, right? You can do it in many other ways, but the most important way is with your own people. How many, into the group and also people in the chat, how many actually have a partner who's focusing on this almost like a full-time job, or has somebody who is tasked within their team to do something like this? That's the big question. Oh yeah, you better.
I'm curious to hear that. And I think that furthermore, doesn't it also depend on who has a clear and defined EVP and employer brand of which to communicate through all those channels? And if that is missing, how could you lead with confidence as a brand?
Yeah, totally. And here's a bold idea that I am already starting to see. I think we're going to see multi-million-dollar technology budgets cut in half in favor of investing more in the content. And because I think the technology is getting cheaper and more effective, but what's missing is the fuel. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't put fuel in the car, it's not going to go anywhere. And I think it is that content.
Yeah.
I think getting that mix of those two things, the efficiency of the machine, then putting the right fuel in it is, you know, that's going to be the keys to success.
Brian, that's a great analogy, because imagine if you put bad fuel into your engine or put water, how would your car run? Right?
Exactly.
That's a great analogy.
It wouldn't.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks.
Thought I'd put that out there.
Don't put, yes, PSA, don't put water in your
I mean, there's
Don't do
plenty of
that.
organizations that have spent multiple millions on their HR tech stack, and then they've failed to invest in any compelling or engaging content whatsoever. And I mean, I wouldn't like to explain that investment decision at the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because we just finished shooting season 2 and season 3 of the AI sessions, and we're talking specifically with companies who they're putting AI and automation into their process, and these, I mean, it's amazing because generally, again, very risk averse, right? Not so much. These companies are coming out and they're coming out full speed ahead. Now they are baby stepping into it, but it's amazing to see because you would have thought that first and foremost, you know, companies are going to be slow just because of risk. But I think back to Gina's point on the vision report, which everybody should definitely get, is the inaction, right? What's the opportunity of action versus inaction? You know what I mean? So I think we're seeing so many companies that are jumping on this very quickly. They're doing it in baby steps, but they're seeing huge gains. That to me is awesome. And to actually have companies come out and want to talk about it, that's at another level. Because most of the time, companies will do it and then they'll sit back in their corner and they're not going to tell anybody about it, right? Or they'll do it in kind of like a self-contained kind of you know, a peer-on-peer Chatham House rules kind of an event. But now they're being loud and proud about how they are changing recruitment, engagement, content, all of that, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you go on TikTok or some of those other platforms where people are creating content constantly, a lot of the corporate brands are turning into consumer brands in a really weird way. Some examples of those is Duolingo. If anybody follows Duolingo on TikTok or Instagram, you will be shocked that that's an actual corporate account. It is oh yeah, RIP Duolingo's owl. I think it's a joke. It's probably going to come back soon, but we don't know what the whole story is there. But they released a little post recently that the owl for Duolingo passed away. I don't know what the story is, so we'll find out. It's not a real owl. It's a little bit.
It's
Oh,
a
got hit by a cyber truck.
look at the he's even dead on my app. Look at it. That's hilarious.
So again, it was hit by a cyber truck. That's what I.
Which is also great branding, by the way, and cohesive
Yes.
across all touch points. Just
Yeah,
pointing that out.
Uh,
He's dead
I know,
everywhere.
and it's genius. And
Yeah.
so and then another great example is Ryanair, which is, you know, a budget airline in the UK. They do a lot of really funny things online to you know, talk about who they are, what they do in a really hilarious way. Spirit as well does a lot of really funny stuff on social media. They're not doing great as a business, but overall, social media wise, they're doing great. So that's fantastic. But you can see a lot of really interesting brands now are popping up and coming up, sharing things that are not necessarily like normal, or they're really bold. They're doing things that are very different than what you were used to. And you as a leader in TA and in HR, I highly recommend you start doing that. And content is the best place to start. Usually, it will change the way that people look at your brand and look at you personally as well. LinkedIn has been juicing the heck out of their algorithm for content right now, especially video. It's
Yeah.
been incredible. And Brian, Chad, Gina, I know you guys probably have a lot to say about that, but that's probably a really good place to start. At least for me, that would be my advice, is start with the content piece, because
Yeah.
I think we've seen some incredible gains about that specifically. Chad, you want to talk more about that?
I know that Maureen Clough, who's on the Chad and Cheese podcast, she last year had 41 million views on LinkedIn alone on her videos, which obviously was juiced. But literally a couple of weeks ago, she's reported that she's already had 8 million. So they're juicing it even more. So it's one of those things where it's like, look, first and foremost, it's good for the brand. Secondarily, if you are first, you're going to get the opportunity to get a lot of this view right up front before they start allowing everybody into it. Right. So you get a chance to, again, the open AI kind of like leapfrog other brands, especially if you're a challenger brand, to be able to leapfrog, get out there, get your voice heard, get your people's voices heard. And that's pretty big. 41 million views on LinkedIn just last year.
In my experience, those brands that have a really clear view of who they are and what they stand for and what they do, going back to that EVP and brand, those that have the clearest view are those that are able to communicate that message clearly and then gain the best followers and viewership. If they don't have a clear view and that sense of their direction, how could they ever expect someone to follow them? So I think in the case of the Duolingo or other brands that we all know, that they have a really strong sense of self first, and then communicate that consistently and cohesively across all the channels where their audience is. And in addition, or equally as important, maybe not more important, a little bit more important, but equal, is really understanding their audience. So take like Wendy's, for example, who's just crushing it on social media for a while now. So like that's a brand that really has a strong sense of self. They can be confident and be bold, but then they also really know their audience, equal to, maybe even more important than knowing themselves.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
important.
it's also cool if you take a look at like Chili's, which was a dying brand, and then they come out with the triple dipper, right? And then it catches fire on TikTok. That was like 27% of their revenues last quarter. 27%. And it was fueled because of, right? It's again, is that bold? I mean, it's literally your product and people enjoying your product. The same thing. What is your product? Your product is work. Your product is a vision, right? Having your people talk about that. Again, as Gina had said, your people should be literally, they should be your message. They should be your messengers.
Absolutely. Looking at the intersection of what you were saying, Chad, about using video, and then Gina, what you were saying about knowing your audience, what we find is, I mean, we see multiple millions of page impressions across all of our career websites every month, obviously. And what we see is those organizations that go to the lengths of understanding their audience, turning on the personalization engine, and then having enough content to accommodate a personalized experience, we see the engagement levels and conversion levels increase by between 23 and 40% with those organizations that use the personalization tools versus those who don't. It's absolutely night and day clear, absolutely clear as a bell.
Yeah.
Just got a
There's,
question.
there's
I
one.
love that. I love that triple dipper. But in RTA, what's the equivalent of a triple dipper moment?
I,
How can-
I literally think it is your people talking about what they do, talking about their products, talking about your product, having fun. I mean, let's face it, if your workplace isn't a fun workplace, then don't embrace that, right? Because you don't want to lie to not just people that you're bringing in, but the people that know that it's not fun working here. But that also gives you some employee sentiment on why your attrition might be high. This is a great communication mechanism that can scale. You're sending a link out to all of your employees to get their feedback. That's perfect. So I think the triple dipper moment is getting those amazing stories. Because that's what, if you take a look at TikTok, where do you really get a lot of traction is when there's stories, personal stories behind it. Get those personal stories out of your employees and you're going to learn a lot. Communication means so much.
Yeah, but we've got the tools. We're just not using the tools, and
Yeah.
we're not using them creatively enough. Now, you know, I think if somebody out there, a recruiter in an organization, goes undercover to reveal the secrets of how to get a job in your organization, and you talk to all the new starters in the last couple of weeks and say, hey, what was the one thing that stood out, or what's your advice, or this, that, and the other, what's it really like, and do it in an undercover investigative journalist sort of style, but a
Yeah.
repeatable format that goes out on TikTok and people understand what you do. And I've been down rabbit holes, we all have, on TikTok and Instagram with those sorts of things. It's just a creative little hook, and I could give you so many examples of repeatable formats that catch fire because they're fun, they're short, they're snackable, and you know what to expect, and you just want to see another one. Before you know it, an hour's gone by, and you realize, look, I have a problem with social media, but that's another talk show.
We got a question. How can you get leadership to buy in to be bold? I think that's a fantastic question. I recently released a video on LinkedIn kind of talking about that. In TA, one of the biggest, I want to say adversaries, but it's like the team that we tend to butt heads with a lot, especially when it comes to promoting our brand, is marketing. We tend to come in and say, hey, marketing team, we want to do this. No. We want to do that. No. They keep slapping you on the wrist for doing this and this and that. Most of the time that happens is because we're approaching it from the wrong angle, where we're saying, hey, we want to do this for employer brand because we want to do it for hiring. The moment they hear those words, they say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's not my job. And I remember like 2 years ago, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, on the podcast, Chad said something. I won't get fired for not doing your job. I will get fired for not doing my job, which is that's how marketing kind of thinks most of the time. I'm not going to do your job because that's just not what I do. I'm just going to focus on that. So whenever you want to talk to leadership, for example, your CMO or your VP of marketing, to get more budget or support to help you promote your brand better, you approach them with a saying, I want to promote our brand, rather than saying our employer brand or our hiring structure or whatever it is. Saying this is what our brand would reflect outside to the world. Some companies, like, and Chad, you can probably jump in, we've talked about this in the past, I know, like Yeti, General Electric, some of those organizations, they have done real research around how does your employer brand look compared to your consumer brand. And there's like a huge tie between what if someone has a very terrible candidate experience, for example,
Yeah.
they're way more or less likely to buy like a Yeti tumbler, for example, from you.
83%.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's crazy to think about that because we don't like we kind of just like apply to jobs, etc. People take that stuff seriously. They do. Like when rejected. Chad, you want to piggyback off of that?
Right. Yeah. Just real quick. I mean, we had the VP of marketing from Yeti on stage with us in Banff a few years ago. And it was funny because before they really started paying attention to their brand when it came to applications, we had him on stage and we actually went through the process and said, when's the last time you actually applied for a job? And he's like, I didn't even apply for this job. Okay, well, let us walk you through it. And we walked him through it and you could see the blood drain out of his face. And I said, so quick question. How many of these people, first and foremost, how many applications do you get a year? I don't know. Okay. Oh, wow. That hurts. And Intel was on the stage and I asked Lynn, I was like, how many do you get? She's like, we get probably 10 million, something like that. And his, again, it just got worse. you have to help them understand that you are hurting the brand overall, right? Whether we want to split it into employment brand, consumer brand, whatever it is, it's the brand. And then at that point, and I don't want to make it seem like it was all us, but Chad and Cheese had the VP of Yeti on, and he was like, I had no clue. Next thing you know, they start focusing on that brand more. So I think there are great ways to be able to go to the CMO or the CRO and to be able to get their buy-in. And as a matter of fact, Amy Butchko, which she was working for SAIC, you know, a small 880,000 employee company, and she went to the CRO and said, look, we're having problems filling sales positions. Let me take you through the process. And the CRO was like, holy, why are we making them do this? That's a great question. I need some budget. Can we possibly blow this up and build something that's better? They did. If you can get your CRO, your CMO, your CFO in as your friend, your buddy, your companion, as opposed to adversary, it's the only way to go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chad, by the way, I was in the room when you were with leading that with Yeti, and it was really interesting to see everyone in the audience's faces too, because everyone in the room was learning it for the first time. And Omar, I'm not going to take offense to you slamming marketing, but being on the marketing side,
Whoops.
having come from consumer marketing 10 years ago, I never knew that recruitment marketing or this whole world even existed. I had no idea. I was in consumer marketing for 10 years, and I had never even thought about recruitment marketing or hiring or anything like that until I came into this industry. And now 10 years later in this industry, I'm looking back and not really much has changed. Yes, those great conversations like Chad is having with Yeti and Alin are happening, but it's still not widely known. So I think it does require, for everyone listening here who's a recruitment marketing talent acquisition leader, it does require your boldness to make that connection and really understand what the business goals are and what the goals are of marketing, understand what the business goals are, and then speak in those terms. So this way you're better connecting, more closely connecting your agenda and what you want to get done to the business goals. So this way you're speaking the same language, and really understanding what are marketing goals and what are the business goals, so that you can be bold to and make those bold decisions.
I think that's right. And I would add, be so good that you can't be ignored as well. So go and make the triple dipper moment for your organization with a little pilot, a tiny little budget, and just be undeniably sort of, create some content which is contagious, and it gets a little bit of virality in the organization. And the other thing is, if your organization is producing a product, go and tell the stories of the people behind the product, and just tap into the pride and passion of the people who put their hands on that product and made it possible. And quite often when you put that content on LinkedIn, it gets a lot more engagement and feedback than just the product content itself. And then you've got some evidence to take to your friends in marketing and say, hey, listen, if we work together here, we can help each other. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's got to, Gina's point earlier, right at the start, finishing where we started, is the evidence and the data is going to be your friend. So look for opportunities to have little tiny small projects, little pilots here and there, where you've got, the flywheel starts to turn on the data, and build from there. If you've got the data and you're being so good you can't be ignored, it's a great way to get people's attention.
Amir, also, it is good to be careful not to be too bold, as it can show up as arrogance or insensitive, by that losing the trust of your audience. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Unless it's your brand, right? Unless that's your brand, right? Like Dick's Last Resort, you go in, they treat you like shit the entire time, right? But that's their brand. So yeah, I think it's always incredibly important, which I think Gina can definitely talk to be true to who you are, right? Don't try to make stuff up. Be true to who you are.
Be true to who you are. And first you have to understand who that is, understand and articulate who you are, understand that, then you can communicate it. And I agree completely, because if you're trying to be bold in the way that brand X is bold, and that's not who you are, not only will your audience, it will not connect with your audience, you're not understanding your audience, and it's going to get worse and worse because the generations that are coming up value that more and more, that authenticity, the transparency, being true to who you are. They smell it from a mile away. And not, and to add another data point to the Yeti conversation about, okay, so the people who are applying for our jobs are also feeling negatively for our consumer brand, and they will also go and tell their friends and family about that. So it is an exponential negative impact on your brand. So Amir, you bring up a great point, because being bold does not mean arrogance.
Right.
That is not equal to arrogance or insensitive. And in fact, it requires hyper awareness and emotional intelligence and empathy and understanding your audience and your people, right? Your audience is part of your people, the people that work there, and your consumers and your prospective candidates. It requires that bold, that is bold, to do that.
Vulnerability as well, right? You know, it's being bold enough to question yourself and put out there what you need to improve on, and you know, to your point, Gina, be more empathetic and compassionate to feedback and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely open to interpretation, but arrogance is not what anyone means on this call.
I feel like we need to do like a brand therapy session.
I think the hardest part though, Gina, is brands actually looking at themselves in the mirror, because they think they look so much different than what they're perceived by their employees, by, you know, people who buy their products, possibly, right? So I think that, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that not like one of the first steps in maybe this 12-step process?
It's very slowly turning into therapy, but it is true though, that awareness is the first step. And if you're not aware of that, that's why I say, if you are aware and willing, you're 50% there, right? Or at least that's what my therapist tells me. But right. On that note, would you like me to share some key takeaways from the vision report? So as I mentioned at the top of this session, Shaker Recruitment Marketing published the vision report, where we brought in all of the greatest insights from our people at Shaker, our subject matter experts, our partners like Omar, Chad, and Brian, to talent acquisition leaders, employer branding leaders, analysts, and influencers. This is the first report that brings together all aspects of the industry. We asked them one question: what is your number one best piece of advice for talent leaders in the year ahead? And the responses were amazing. The overarching theme was be bold, to take action rather than inaction. And here are 3 things that you might consider to do now, that are things that you can put on your agenda for 2025. And those are: get your arms around analytics to empower more confident decisions. So that could be the core of what will help you to be bold, by getting your arms around the analytics. And you're not trying to boil the ocean. You might not solve for everything, but start building your data arsenal to equip you and arm you to be bold. Number 2 is to learn specifically how AI can make your brand experience more personalized. Brian shared some great points, and I know you could probably have a whole spin-off conversation about that. Us at Shaker, for sure, our consultants and brand experts can help you learn specifically how AI can help make your brand experience more personalized. And then finally, effectively articulate and amplify your EVP cohesively across all touchpoints. If you don't already have a well-articulated EVP and employer brand, that's something that we do recommend. We have a QR code here where you can scan and download the vision report. There's some great insights from talent leaders across the globe in here. And then we're going to be building our 2025 report soon. So that's more to come on that.
Amazing. Did everybody scan the QR code if you want to download it? The vision report is absolutely incredible. Seriously, I just enjoyed reading that. It sounds a little like nerdy, but I'm like, oh, this is so good. I loved it. I actually printed it out too. So it's really good. Thank you all for this amazing conversation. And then, oh, here we go. Oh yeah, we'll have the link. Let's drop the link in the chat, Gina.
And also, you've got email addresses to everybody, so you can just like send all this stuff out, right?
And we'll send the recording as
email it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll send
Unless you're Omar, then you want to snail mail it to him because he really wants to feel it.
I really like to feel it, Chad. Yeah. Anyways, so thank you all for this discussion. We really enjoyed it. I think we've talked about a lot in this hour, and it's really exciting. Chad, Brian, thank you guys so much for joining us. Gina, as always, you're
Thank
incredible.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Uh,
everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Gina at Shaker, Omar at JobPixel, Brian at Happy Dance, and Chad and Cheese Podcast. Very creative name. But thank you all so much, and we can't wait to see you guys on the next time.
Thanks
Bye
so
bye.
much.
Later.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye now.